Good day, everyone. My name is Shannon Valdezon, and I would love to welcome you to the September issue of Esri State and Local Connect. This is our webinar series where we really try to curate content for state and local government professionals like you guys. This month, we are focusing on diving into the latest GIS capabilities for planning and community development. So this is actually the last one in our department specific series. So we've done webinars on land records, environment and natural resources, and now today on planning and community development. So I encourage you to look at the past issues, and thank you again for joining us today. Just a few housekeeping issues. I will be moderating the questions as Keith here presents. So please, if you have any questions for our speaker, feel free to go to the questions pane in the GoToWebinar panel and type them in, and we'll be sure to save some time at the end for those. And then the last thing is that this is recorded. All of you guys will receive the recording in about a week. We encourage you to take another look or share with a colleague. So just remember, it is recorded in case you need to log off early or you miss it. And with that, I'd like to introduce our speaker for today. His name is Keith Cook. I am happy to work with him each and every day. We drive each other nuts, but we're here for each other. He is the industry manager for planning and community development, so he has a long history working with users in this space, and so he's going to share kind of the newest things that you need to be aware of. Keith, I'll kick it over to you.
Thank you, Shannon. And I did cringe when you started introducing me because I wasn't sure how that was going to go.
I believe you.
I know. So again, thank you everyone for joining us. Even though I know many of you are still working virtually, doesn't mean you're not busy. So I appreciate you taking time out of your day to join us, and hope this will be really useful for you. And we're going to hit at a high level several topics, and again, focusing on planning and community development. So just to recap what Shannon was talking about, the purpose of these is really, it's part of our overall community building within Esri, and this is really important to us. We want to make sure that we're providing you with some of the latest information about trends that we're seeing, and then also solutions that can address those trends. And so we're going to be dealing with those today in the planning and community development field. I think if we went around the room and we talked about our individual cities and counties, regional governments and so forth that we work for, we could all talk about the challenges that we're dealing with. And there would probably be a lot of different ones amongst them. And you can see some of them here, and there's no mystery that our communities are challenged. I think one of the biggest trends that we've been seeing lately, and this has really been going on since about 2019, is the trend of counter-urbanization, which is really interesting because even as late as 2019, we were stating some statistics from the UN that were showing that if current trends continued, about 2/3 of the world's population would be in urban areas by 2050. This has clearly taken a turn, but I think the interesting thing about it is that it's not just because of the pandemic. This trend actually of people moving out of urban areas actually started in 2019. According to US Census Bureau numbers, cities just in America lost 2 million people just in 2019 alone. So this got exacerbated, obviously, with the pandemic. You had people that were living in tight quarters in cities, paying a lot for rent or for their mortgage, and they were doing so because there were great amenities in the city, or their job was there, or a combination of both. And then when the pandemic took away those amenities and their job no longer required them to be there were a lot of people that were saying, well, wait a minute, I could move out and have more space. And so this has been challenging for urban planners because they're seeing people, a lot of people, and of course it varies from city to city, move out. They're seeing empty offices, empty businesses and so forth. But in suburban and rural areas, a lot of them are seeing a level of growth that they weren't anticipating. So, so a lot of them are having to rethink their comprehensive plans that they updated even just a couple of years ago. So there are a number of different challenges that communities are dealing with, especially a lot of them are tied to the COVID-19 pandemic. Thankfully, GIS helps to interconnect our cities, and this has been an overriding theme throughout the Esri State and Local Connect. And I hope you've been able to see that, and we try to reinforce this message over and over to folks, and that by using people and technology within their organizations, monitoring human activities, modeling that behavior, being able to actually view that information and create actionable intelligence from it, it actually helps us create understanding. So GIS really has got to be the focus of this because it helps interconnect and integrate everything that we're doing. So that's what we're going to really dive into today. Specifically within planning and community development, we're focusing on three main areas here. One would be the traditional planning initiatives. So these would be the day-to-day current planning activities, the rezonings, the variances, the subdivision reviews, and so forth that planners have to deal with on a daily basis, as well as updating things like the comprehensive plan or special projects like a downtown revitalization plan, things of that nature. We're also focusing a lot on housing. And of course, that is intricately tied to planning. And you don't need me to go through all the housing issues that have been going on, especially over the last year and a half. Housing shortage that exists, the demand, the prices that are, and the way that it's almost precluding affordable housing in a lot of neighborhoods. And then we'll also talk about and focus on economic development, both from a business retention and expansion standpoint, as well as business recruitment. So even though this is, for most cities and counties, this is three different departments, right? They'll have different names and so forth, but this is usually three different entities. But they all have overlapping workflows and goals that they're dealing with, and they're all working towards at least, hopefully, some sort of common goal together. So that's what we're going to be addressing today in our talk. And if you've been to any Esri presentation in the last 10 or 15 years, you've probably seen a slide very similar to this. I like using it as well with planners because the workflows are actually very, very similar. So GIS really provides a framework for planning, from the initial managing of data and measurement to visualizing and mapping a proposed development, analyzing and modeling changes to that, being able to get into the details of the planning and the design work, moving on to a data-driven decision, and then acting on that decision. Really, GIS is an integral part in each one of those steps. And so GIS also provides a digital twin to us, right? So again, something that was emphasized in the infrastructure webinar earlier. So, and again, the digital twin provides us a way to be able to create a dynamic model of our city. So specifically from a planning standpoint, being able to show the size and structure of buildings, to be able to see zoning, to see the infrastructure, utilities, and so forth, traffic information, and then being able to use that to automate workflows, to be able to work in 3D. 3D is a way of life for planners now. We'll talk about that more. But this is really the key for enabling a digital transformation. And again, as we know, GIS really organizes all of this geographic knowledge. And we talk, I think, whenever I see this slide, I think about, the data that we had to work with 15, 20 years ago as compared to today, and how much more is there, both from a spatial and non-spatial nature. But GIS helps us organize all of that knowledge to again, reach that shared understanding so that all of our departments, right, everyone that's involved within planning, because it doesn't work in a vacuum, can work together and be able to be on the same page. One thing I wanted to emphasize, though, is, I know we'll have some people on this webinar that are GIS professionals that work with planners, and then planners that work with GIS professionals, right? So, and some that wear both hats. I got to do that back in the day. So, but planners are already using GIS, and it's really inspiring to me at the APA National Planning Conference every year, back eons ago when we could actually go to conferences, but it was fun meeting students then who, to a person, they would all come up and say, oh yeah, we're taking this GIS class in our graduate level course or undergraduate curriculum. It's a part of it now. And it's funny how that has changed over the last couple of decades, to where it was sort of seen as a niche technology to now where it's integrated into planners that are up and coming today into the workspace. And it helps build that geospatial infrastructure. So I just wanted to provide some examples, for GIS is being used in the controller's office in Los Angeles for being able to identify locations to house homeless. Again, being able to visualize urban planning in 3 dimensions, being able to have an interactive community planning system where you're getting feedback from the public. It's also being used to model and analyze and visualize data, right? So it's not just a map, there's analysis tied to it, right? So being able to use augmented reality, where imagine being able to take a device out in the field and being able to see the zoning or the building envelope for a particular parcel. One of the things I really love as well is being able to analyze permitting patterns. So even if you're not the person that works on the permitting system, there's probably data there that you need, and GIS helps us analyze that, even if there's not a module for that within the permitting system itself. And then being able to understand demographics, being able to have an intricate knowledge of what's going on within our neighborhoods. And then also being able to evaluate proposed developments, right? So being able to take a data-driven approach to design. Now, this doesn't mean that, everything is automated and there's nothing, there's not a human touch involved with this from the planners. There is, but there's a way to be able to better justify your designs as a planner. So if you look in the bottom left-hand corner, there's the Boston Planning and Development Agency using dashboards to be able to communicate not only internally, but also with elected officials, with administrators, with community leaders about the status of a project. So that everyone is working off the same data. They're on the same page. In the bottom right-hand corner, Tacoma, Washington, we're going to have we found a story about this recently, about how they're using GIS to be able to create a housing strategy and be able to get public input about where affordable housing is most needed, so that the public can not only see the 2 different plans, but provide feedback on it as well. And then the thing I love as well is the 3D simulation, right? So this is from one of our great partners, Hauser Levine, that created this in City Engine and then in Unreal Engine to be able to do the animation, to be able to show Morrisville, North Carolina, what their town center could look like from different vantage points. So it's not just a pretty video, there's actually data tied to that as well, so they can see the usage or the potential usage for any of these proposed developments, and be able to see, okay, what would my line of sight look like from different vantage points? And then AI and machine learning is something that you may think, well, that's not really ready for planners yet, and you would be mistaken. This has actually taken off very quickly. In fact, the American Planning Association has a task force underway that's actually looking at formulating strategies for planners about how to use AI. In Raleigh, North Carolina, they substituted contractors sitting in a chair at intersections counting vehicles with cameras that will now automate not only vehicular traffic, but pedestrians, as well as bicycle traffic. And then in Mobile, Alabama, they are using cameras on the sides of their county vehicles to be able to take pictures, and then as they head out to do assessments and so forth, and then those images are processed automatically to be able to look for, to do blight detection. So looking for things like boarded up windows or graffiti or overgrown lots or damage to the house or the roof. And then this information can be shared throughout the county and the city with other departments. And then we're also seeing the use of GIS for dealing with future climate change. So in Nashville, they're using GIS for dealing with the flooding from the Cumberland River, which flows through the middle of town, and then identifying properties that needed to be purchased for relocation. So being able to understand where were the areas that were perpetually being flooded, where could 50, 100, 500-year floods occur, what damage might exist from that. And then in Austin, they're working with all communities, prioritizing those that are disadvantaged for an urban forestry planning. And so this is really useful because it's a way for neighborhoods to become more cohesive. You actually work in the neighborhood that you live in terms of planting trees, again, for environmental purposes. And so I think that there are a number of different ways here, and I only put 3 up here. I probably could have filled about 30 more slides with those. So the things we've been talking about are more project focused up until now. And I think one of the things that really excites me the most is how GIS is being used on the planning side for the bigger picture, for evaluating policies. In Charlotte, North Carolina, they're using GIS to be able to create an equitable housing framework, to be able to understand where affordable housing can be spread equitably throughout the city. A similar project in Long Beach, where they're combining affordable housing with an economic mobility strategy, where they can identify the most suitable locations for affordable housing based on things like proximity to jobs, to schools, to transit locations, to groceries, and so forth. And then Tucson, Arizona, we're actually going to have a story coming out very shortly about this. Be on the lookout for that. But they have been using GIS to be able to, as a part of their urban poverty and stress reports that they create about every 5 to 7 years. And so this was a way for the public to be able to provide feedback about what was going on in their neighborhoods. And then this data was then collected and then provided back as a report back to the city, and GIS was an integral part of that. One of the interesting things that I've noted is that, is how technologies have advanced during pandemics. If you watched the stock price of Zoom before March of 2020 to now, skyrocketed. Same thing for many other things that we used during the pandemic. Well, if you go back 100 years, again, where you have folks with masks and theaters were closed and so forth, you had people that were living in dense cities and realized, oh wait, if I purchase this automobile, I can live further out and then be able to drive into my job. Now, that being said, I would never try to tell planners that automobiles are great technology, right? That's dangerous ground to tread on. But that was one of the things that really exploded during the pandemic. And then likewise, if we look at that today, right, we've replaced the automobile with Zoom and with Teams and GoToWebinar and so forth, to be able to communicate with colleagues. And so that's really transforming our cities. And I mentioned that to some degree in terms of counter urbanization, right? So geospatial infrastructure is also a part of this new technology. It's providing a new platform, and it's really emerging rapidly to where we're moving towards more of a distributed network for geospatial content. And what do I mean by that? So in the past, an enterprise GIS was seen as sort of this central hub of data that was sitting on a couple of servers, and the GIS team were like the supreme data overlords of that, and they were the gatekeepers of that data. And so what we've seen that has transpired, especially because of the development of this web GIS pattern, to where you don't have to necessarily have a desktop license to be able to do GIS, to perform GIS functions and do GIS tasks, is that we don't need necessarily to have that centralized database. We can actually have this distributed so that people in the planning department, who are the subject matter experts about zoning, about land use, about variances and all that fun stuff, they can be responsible for that data. And so individuals and teams and entire departments and organizations can work across this distributed data, and it works across multiple scales. So the geospatial infrastructure I create at a city of 5,000 would actually have a lot of similarities to one that I would create at 500,000. It works at different scales, and again, helps us to interconnect everything. And it goes back to that digital twin that I was talking about, so that, again, we can have subject matter experts that have direct access to the data that they need to be able to perform their work. But the data is one thing. You actually have to be able to have an app to be able to run it as well, right? So, we have again, web apps are just pervasive now. I would be disingenuous if I said these are new. They're not. They've been around for a while, and they continue to grow. And it's sometimes it can be a little intimidating trying to keep up with everything. But the point is that this allows very focused very focused apps to be able to perform specific workflows. And again, you can allow the subject matter expert, the planner, the economic developer, the housing expert, and so forth to be able to run that data. So some of the apps that we're seeing specifically in the planning field that have gained so much traction are, again, simple web maps and then dashboards. I'm a huge proponent of dashboards. I think they're an extremely useful way to communicate to administrators, to elected officials, to community leaders, the big picture and the information that they need to be able to help make decisions. The other one is story maps. And I will say this, if you get nothing else out of this webinar, please understand a story map is a planner's best friend. It's an economic developer's best friend. It is such a powerful way to be able to tell a story. And we say this all the time when we do these workshops, but planners always have a story to tell. And that's whether we're talking about the upcoming, the 8 items that are coming up on the next Planning Commission agenda, or the wholesale changes to the comprehensive plan, or working on a special district. There's always a story to tell. That's what story maps allow you to do, to be able to use different types of media, maps, of course, but also videos, images, charts, graphs, documents, and be able to combine them in an easy to use, you're just doing drag and drop. It's amazingly simple, but creating these amazing products. Again, back in eons ago when we were able to go to shows, one of the things that we would do at the APA National Planning Conference were these hands-on GIS workshops, not long, about 90 minutes for each of them. And these were hands-on for planners. And I think one of the best endorsements I ever got from story maps was when I was working with a planning director that was there, and she was going through it, and she saw what the light clicked. She saw what she had done. She goes, oh, and the best phrase, she said, I love this because it looks like I did way more work than I actually did. I think that's a great testament to it because, again, it allows you to be able to tell your story in a dynamic, attractive way to get the attention of your audience. So again, story maps is just a part of ArcGIS Online, storymaps.arcgis.com. If you haven't already bookmarked that, you need to. So I wanted to go over some of the apps now that we talk about diving into the latest capabilities. These are really the apps that I feel are absolutely necessary within a planning department. And I wanted to start with the Business Analyst web app. You may also know it as Community Analyst. You may be using a version of that or have heard of that. To me, this is really a foundational app for both planners and economic developers because I've visited hundreds of sites across the country. I've yet to find one that either wasn't using this or couldn't use it. It is immensely powerful. So this is just an add-on to ArcGIS Online, and it allows you to be able to have access to about 1,700, a little more than that actually, different variables of demographic, socioeconomic, business, spending behavior, job data, and so forth. And then be able to apply that to your community or surrounding community. So as you can see here, I can create service areas based on a proposed office park. What's the drive time or what's the walk time to this store? If I'm looking at a restaurant, what's the market potential for that? How much do people in this area spend on certain types of food? I can also use it for demographic mapping. In the bottom left-hand corner, I've actually created a bivariate map where I'm looking at both the median household income, but also the housing affordability index. So we can actually look and see which areas actually have the most income and the most affordable housing and vice versa, right? To see where we need to work on housing strategies. We can create beautiful reports and infographics. We can leverage the tapestry segmentation, which takes a deep dive into the socioeconomic traits and market traits of particular communities that goes down to the block level. And then I can also view detailed business data. So this is actually data I can search just by category. I can look by NAICS or SIC code, be able to see information like a number of employees, sales volume, and so forth. So I can do comparative analysis, being able to compare my proposed site with another proposed site to see which one might be best. It's just an immensely powerful tool to be able to get a deeper understanding about the neighborhoods within your community. And again, as I mentioned, neighborhoods within other communities, especially useful for competitive economic development situations. That's probably the most diplomatic way I can put that. So in addition to that, I wanted to focus on ArcGIS Insights and ArcGIS Solutions. Many of you are probably already familiar with our ArcGIS Solutions. They've been around for a while. They were an immensely powerful resource for you. ArcGIS Solutions really provide focused applications to deal with so many of the workflows, the standard workflows that planners and economic developers have to deal with on a daily basis. So if you haven't, I put the website up there, solutions.arcgis.com. Please bookmark that. You can deploy these apps directly through ArcGIS Online. We have story maps for each of them to walk you through how to deploy them. They're free, so that helps. That's easy to budget for. They're also open source. We actually provide the source code for that, but which is great, but I'm not a developer. So the best part for me is they're configurable. I can go in and change the color scheme or the logo on the map and change it, make it look the way that I want. We have dozens of these for planning and economic development. So I would strongly encourage you to take a look at those. Again, they're also covered by tech support. So, and your gauge to go by, as I've told many of our users before, is I've set some of these solutions up. So if I can do it, anyone can. And then ArcGIS Insights is our business intelligence tool. Again, a very powerful way to extract additional value from your permitting system. So even if you don't work with your permitting system directly, you can take an output from that, be able to bring it in just as a table. In fact, what you're looking at here is a workbook I created. Again, nothing terribly difficult. I took a spreadsheet that was available on an open data site, dragged and dropped it in, and was able to create a map of the permits within the area, a use code tree map, being able to see the status of permits and so forth. So think about that from the standpoint of huge data sets, being able to gain business intelligence from them. That's what ArcGIS Insights can do for you. And again, that's also an add-on just within ArcGIS Online. When we talk about community engagement, that really doesn't work in a vacuum. No one just does community engagement. It's tied to projects. It's tied to specific initiatives. So one of the things I really love about ArcGIS Hub is that it allows you to be able to create, instead of just traditional open data, have a very focused initiative and supply the maps and apps and information that are necessary for the public to be able to engage in that. And so many of you are familiar with ArcGIS Hub. I just wanted to provide a couple of examples. We'll actually have a story about this out pretty soon. The city of Seattle has created 80 Universe to be able to educate their public about accessory dwelling units in an effort to be able to create additional housing within the city. So there's a number of resources there, including pre-approved plans to be able to use. And then you can also search your property and be able to see exactly what you can do on that property. Providence has a neighborhood snapshot for all of their different neighborhoods to be able to provide a dashboard to show the housing situation, home value, household income, and so forth. And then Bucks County, Pennsylvania does a great job of being able of showing the public what's coming up in the next planning commission meeting in terms of proposed subdivisions and land developments. But what I really love is they also show what's happened in the last 4 to 5 years. So people that just moved in can have some context about the types of developments that have gone on. One of the new things that just came out recently with ArcGIS Hub is MapBased Feedback. And I can't tell you, I saw an early version of this last year and I was so excited. I'm glad it's out now. This is a way for the public to be able to provide feedback in a map by actually drawing boundaries, points, lines, polygons, and being able to add their comments to it. So think about this from the standpoint of updating a comprehensive plan, how useful that would be to be able to get feedback, because of course all feedback from the public is always constructive and surrounded by logic and rational thinking. But it's a fantastic way to be able to get, again, geographic feedback from folks. So again, this is new within ArcGIS Hub. And there's a new blog on that on the ArcGIS blog if you haven't seen it yet to detail it. And then finally, I wanted to focus on ArcGIS Urban. And so this is really, this is such an impactful application because it really transforms the way that we can do scenario planning, both for developments that are currently under review and projects that we're looking at down the road. And it's, again, it's all web-based. It's a part of ArcGIS Online. But it's a way for us to be able to create multiple scenarios for a single project area and then be able to compare those scenarios and see what kind of development, what the impacts of those developments would be. In other words, do we want to focus more on high density residential, or do we want more mixed use development? How many jobs is that going to create? How many people are we going to add? What's the impact going to be on utilities and traffic and stormwater and so forth? That's what Urban does. And so it allows you in a web-based environment to be able to create these developments, measure their impact, and then be able to share them with others. There's so much within this. And if you haven't seen this already, we have a number of workshops that are available if you want to take a deeper dive into Urban. I'll have my email up at the end. You can feel free to email me. I'll send you that information, but you can just search for ArcGIS Urban workshops. We have a lot of them going on. So if you want to take a deep dive into this, I would highly encourage you to do so. So we had a new release of Urban come out just recently, actually. So a few weeks ago, and I wanted to highlight some of the things that are new here. So one, I love this part. You can sketch new buildings yourself. So typically what Urban will do is allow you to create a building envelope based on maximum development that's allowed within that building envelope, based on setbacks, building height, floor area ratio, and so forth. Now you can actually sketch new buildings. So you can actually take that development that came up and actually change it the way that you want, move things around, change the size and so forth. And if you notice on the bottom right-hand corner, as we're changing the building, it's actually updating our floor area ratio. And if we were removing floors, that would be updated as well, our space use. So it's a really powerful way to be able to create and sketch custom buildings. Think about this from the standpoint of working with developers that have submitted a site plan. It's not quite what you'd like to see, and you can work with them on in a very interactive way on how that could change or how that could look, right? And then also custom metrics. I'll give you fair warning, this video is going to be hard to watch because we're going to create a model builder essentially very quickly. But this is a way to be able to measure the important metrics within your developments that you want to be able to see. So for instance, if I want to make sure that I have a certain percentage of affordable housing within my new residences that I create downtown, I can assign that percentage. You can kind of see what that looks like. I can measure what my market value is going to look like. I can measure the impact of space use, right? Whether it's for retail or residential apartments or what have you. And again, helps us take that data-driven approach to development. And again, it's a powerful way to be able to, in terms of that data-driven approach, to be able to communicate to administrators, to stakeholders, what this development really means. And if you were to change a couple of different parameters, what would be different about it? The suitability modeling to me is something I'm most excited about. For those that were earlier users of Urban, we actually had this or components of this as a separate app called the Policy Validation app. This is now much of that core functionality, or much of that functionality is in the core product now. So this allows us to take multiple external layers and be able to take multiple variables and identify the suitability of parcels based on those criteria. So in this, what we're looking at is potential space for additional housing based on vacant parcels and building height differential. So if there's room to grow up, or if there is room to grow out, or if there's vacant parcels, we can identify the most suitable places based on that criteria. And here you're going to see we calculate the scores. And again, we can see a data-driven approach to where our development should occur. So it's a good idea, not because Keith says it's a good idea. It's a good idea because it follows these parameters that we're looking for. I think that's one of the great things about the suitability modeling tools. Then there's also collaboration and markup. So it's easier to work between scenarios to be able to get feedback from colleagues, from other stakeholders, from community leaders and so forth about specific components of the development, right? And be able to ask questions and create discussions and so forth. And then finally is the shadow analysis tools, which I think are really useful, particularly for urban planners that have to deal with, again, new developments going up. What is the impact going to be in accumulated shadows over the day versus a given time interval? So if I just wanted to measure what's the time interval during normal business hours, I can do that. And then and be able to see that again at any individual site. love being able to do this. This is so impactful. So I'm not going to go through all of this. You'll be happy to know I'm not going to read this bullet point by bullet point. I just wanted you to be able to see the road ahead for ArcGIS Urban. And the thing I want you to be able to understand is we're putting a lot into this. This is a very critical application for us. We plan to be in this one for the long haul. And there's so much coming down the pipeline that I'm excited about, including transportation support to be able to do detailed traffic analysis, transit analysis, being able to create thematic plans, being able to not only save your suitability models, but be able to share them with others. And then the midterm, I think one thing to look forward to is for those that are big into, that have done a lot of portal implementations, you'll be able to use ArcGIS Urban in a portal environment down the road. Again, the link is up there to the top right. There's the public roadmap. You can take a look at that. And of course, we welcome your feedback. I say this all the time to planners. I said it to GIS users. We don't run a planning department on the side at Esri. We rely on our users to be able to tell us what works, what doesn't, what's missing. So this is, we really covet your feedback. We want to be able to get that. So to mention, everything that we've been showing so far has been web-based, but I want to focus on this, is that everything that we're doing is it's part of the ArcGIS platform. So the scenarios I create in Urban, right, the ones I share in Hub, I can deploy these, I can take them into City Engine and be able to create virtual reality scenes like this to be able to share with others. And I'll just show that one more time. I should put that on the loop. But again, it's all part of the platform. So you can make your designs, keep them as simple or make them as complex and show them here as you want. It's really up to you. And I think that's one of the most powerful things about this. So you will be also glad to know, I will not read this slide for you, but GIS is transforming planning, and we've covered a lot of this today. I think the thing I want to make sure that you understand is that planners and economic developers have their own subject matter expertise. This web GIS pattern enables them to be able to use applications that they can use to answer their questions. This does not put GIS people out of a job by any stretch. It actually makes you busier. You're welcome, but not with many of the tasks that you may have been assigned as not being a planning expert, not an economic development expert. Planners and economic developers can actually perform a lot of these tasks themselves now and be able to work and answer their own questions. And again, we're using a lot of different technologies. If you are a GIS person, I wanted to focus on this because a lot of this you may not, your comp plans and so forth, that may not really register with you. If you're looking to work with to empower your planning department, again, a lot of it is sitting down and listening. That's what I do a lot of when I'm on site. I just want to understand, what are your workflows that you're dealing with? What are your challenges? What are you really mandated with? What is your city manager, your county administrator really looking for you to do? And then I would start with WebGIS. Again, Pro is great, love it. Let's start with WebGIS, okay? It's accessible for most folks. And again, through ArcGIS Online is the foundation. We've got Business Analyst web app to do our analysis of demographics, Urban to be able to do our scenario planning and design, Hub integrated through all of this because it's our civic inclusion, our community engagement component. One point I want to emphasize with Hub in that regard is that one of the reasons why it's so impactful is that it doesn't require people, citizens to actually be at the Planning Commission meeting Tuesday at 7 o'clock. No one wants to be at that meeting, right? I speak from experience. No one wants to be there, but it doesn't mean that they don't care about their community, and it doesn't mean that they don't care about the direction that their neighborhood is going. Hub is one of those tools that really generates civic inclusion because it allows the public to be able to engage in a way that makes sense for them, right? And is convenient for them. So again, that's sort of intertwined through everything that's going on within a planning department. Insights is a great complement to your permitting system. It is a great way to leverage additional functionality from a system that you've probably invested a lot of money in, probably much more than you've invested in GIS. And then the ArcGIS Solutions, cannot emphasize this enough. It's a great way to optimize the workflows and the decision-making that goes on a day-to-day basis within the department. Again, as GIS professionals, you're going to need to support their efforts that require more advanced processes, like creating a 3D base map or doing some work with imagery. But again, encourage them to take training throughout the year. And when I say training, that could be something as simple as a lesson on learn.arcgis.com. Free, easy to get to, doesn't take a huge time commitment, and it's a great way to get your feet wet in the technology. And again, what you're doing through all of this is you're guiding them on a path to create data-driven results. That's really the key. And that's what planners need to do and want to be able to do on a more consistent basis. So one of the things I did not talk about was the amount of data that's available to you. So that'll be a good teaser for the next one in October. Where to look when you need data, that'll be our next state and local connect. And again, you can register the same place that you did for this one. That'll be on October 20th. And then this is my contact information here. Again, I'm the industry manager for planning and community development. I would love to know what you're doing with GIS in the planning department. If you have questions about how do we get started, please feel free to contact your account team. That's what they're there for, or contact me. We're here to help you. That's our main purpose. And visit us at esri.com/planning. We have access to ebooks and a lot of case studies in there. You can also follow me on Twitter and LinkedIn, although in full disclosure, it is college football season, so I'm probably going to drop some college football related posts on Twitter, so I apologize for nothing. All right, Shannon, we'll throw it back to you to see if we had any questions.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Keith. So just a reminder, there's a few questions in here, but if you have any additional, now's the time. We have a few more minutes, so get your questions in on the question pane there. So Keith, the first question is, where does the data in the Business Analyst web app come from?
Oh, that's a great question. So we have a lot of documentation for that, but it basically comes from the Census Bureau, from ACS, and from Data Axle. So Data Axle provides a lot of the business data, a lot of the spending behavior data. And so if you just go to bao.arcgis.com, you can go to the data documentation, and there is a lot of metadata there that is a wonderful cure for insomnia. But this is the good news is that we have a data team that's dedicated to getting this all in place. They do an amazing job, but you don't have to download anything. This is just updated as software as a service. So that's one of the benefits. You don't have to worry about, do I have the latest data? Well, when you log on, you have the latest data. So
this is kind of a follow-up question from someone named Brent. He says, where can we gain access to the Esri tapestry data? So probably not business analyst related, but he can still access that, correct?
Right. Yeah, you can access that. Yeah, of course, it's available in the Business Analyst web app. It's also available. You can go to esri.com/tapestry and go directly to that page and kind of get some more insight. You can do a search on your zip code and so forth. But on the Business Analyst web app, we actually go down to the block group level at that point. So for getting a little bit more detail down at the neighborhood level, that's one of the places that that Business Analyst web app provides additional value.
And a shameless plug, as Keith already mentioned, next month's webinar is on where to find the best data, right? So we'll be going over kind of definitely some of the stuff Keith talked about today, but also the Living Atlas, which is free to all users, the Esri Maps for Public Policy site. So maybe Brent, checking out that next month's webinar, you'll find additional places to find great data.
Can I jump in real quick about the tapestry? I think one of the things we talk about, that this is used on the state and local government side, it's also used by businesses. So we have a number of commercial clients that use the tapestry to be able to measure the success of their stores. They don't necessarily all measure them based on proximity. They do it based on what tapestry segment they're in. So if they're in the laptops and latte section, many of them are comparing them to other laptops and latte neighborhoods. I just love saying that. Throughout the nation. I think that's really interesting how commercial entities have really been drawn to the tapestry. Anyway.
Awesome. All right, and then I think we have time for one more question. So the last one is, can you share scenarios with other planners or developers in ArcGIS Urban?
Oh yeah, so So when you create a scenario, you can choose to lock it or unlock it, which means that if someone else logs in and you've locked it, they obviously can view it. But what they could do, so while they can't alter it, they could create a scenario built on top of yours, right? So yours stays secure, but theirs said, oh, well, Keith put this mixed use development in, I'm going to add something else. Of course, you can unlock it as well and make that available to other planners and so forth, and you can all collaborate on the development together. So yeah, you can share it with other planners and other users, and keep it as secure as you want.
And with that, thank you, Keith, for your time today. Thank you,
Thank
everyone,
you.
for taking the time. And we hope you have a good rest of your day.